Following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
It's Monday night at 9 p.m. and time for Sex Talk with the Segal brothers. Dr. Ricky Segal is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Segal is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Segal brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Good evening, and welcome to Sex Talk with the Segal brothers. My name is Dr. Richard Segal. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Segal, a certified sexuality educator and clinical sexologist.
And my big brother.
Yes, indeed. Proud to be
back. Thank you. Welcome back.
Welcome back to you as well.
Thank you for joining
fun
us. Yes, we did. We had a nice little getaway to the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
If you're joining us on the radio in South Florida, we are on 95.3 FM or 1470 AM, or we're streaming live on Facebook. If you're joining us on Facebook,
hey,
hello. Thank you for joining us. Please feel free to hit that like button and share and help us spread the world. Spread the word.
Yes.
Spread the word around the world.
And speaking of word spreading, you can also spread some words here with us. You can call us live at 888-565-1470 or submit your question with that little button on Facebook. Love to hear from you.
So,
how you doing?
Good. Very good.
Starting a new month.
Indeed.
Happens to be, I think, a pretty important month.
Our birthday month.
Our birthday month. It's also Women's History Month.
Ah, very nice.
Okay, so we got
Celebrate
another
the history
month.
of women.
That's right. That's right. To appreciate. And people remember that just about everything that they can think of to appreciate involved women.
Sure. Except that silly old origin story again.
Oh, yeah. Well, forget that.
Adam's rib. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of different versions of that, too. Including the tail of a dog.
All the parts that didn't work.
Yep.
So, we were doing just kind of a grab bag last week. We gathered a number of questions from our students in our sex ed classes. And we figured we would just continue that. Is that a phone for us?
I'm not sure. So yeah, we'll keep on going with that, too. But,
let's...
talk a little bit about some things that are in the works and some things that we have coming up.
Yes, indeed.
Especially, again, for the month of March. I've mentioned before that I have partnered with the wonderful Ann Goldberg and Savvy Senior Services. We've been putting some programs together that we're starting to put out there. One is called Sex After 60, which is sort of based on, exactly, some work that we used to do in the past, combining with a lot of the work that she's doing as well, and part of her program and a book that she's been working on called The Art of Living Longer, The Guide to Living Longer. So we're really targeting boomers and seniors and looking at sex, relationships, dating. The old sex, drugs, and rock and roll is still very much alive, but very, very different.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see.
It's still really funny to see that, today's old people are not our grandparents' old people.
No, they really aren't. I mean, when you look at basically our side of the boomer generation, it is a whole different ballgame.
What do you mean, our side? We're on the babies, the young side.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
The front end. All the people who are in their 70s.
Exactly. This
now.
is a generation that is really, really split, and that the older half of the boomer generation, our generation,
now they're in nursing homes,
is kind of significantly older than the bottom half of that generation.
And the folks who invented sex, drugs, and rock and roll aren't going to give it up without kicking and screaming.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely
so
not.
I know you've done a lot of work, a lot in a real short period of time. Recently with nursing homes, healthcare facilities, nursing administrators.
Yeah, in the last couple of years, and as you know, even presented at a big conference. Where were we? Denver.
Right.
Last year, particularly looking at how we deal with issues around sexuality and intimacy, and eroticism and relationships when people have dementia.
Well, same thing for all those years that we fought in sex ed, insisting that children are sexual beings.
Exactly.
That should not be treated as asexual.
Right.
The other end of the discomfort spectrum is that seniors are sexual beings as well.
That's right.
And there's such
That's
a tendency to desexualize, right? The staff at nursing homes treat patients like they're children.
Absolutely, because, I mean, again, get very paternalistic, and sort of that lead foot is always, well, we're trying to do what's best for them. And yeah, I'm always challenging that. No,
Really?
you're doing what's easier for you.
Right.
That's the difference.
And most comfortable.
And that's what it comes down to.
The big issues of privacy and
Right.
agency.
Well, the whole abstinence thing is the same when it comes to kids as it is with old people. Right? It's really the people who are enforcing it
Who are
that have
most
the position to say,
uncomfortable.
look, I'm not comfortable with it, so you can't do it. So it really comes down to that. So a lot of that, the training that I've been doing, again, working with nursing home administrators and ALFs, memory care centers, on developing policies and setting up systems and doing training with the staff so we can respond better to these kinds of things. In a nursing home, if two residents or any residents are caught, even the language, caught having sex, it's, the framing
Caught
is
acting
they're
out.
acting out.
That's right. Just like treatment.
It's always an alarm that gets sounded.
Oh my goodness, they're
So
acting
yeah, so
out
that whole
again.
desexualizing. So and people buy into a lot of the scripts that they come up with. So Ann and I are really wanting to target adults as they're getting older, and keep that fire lit. Keep going. We are sexual beings until we die. In fact, we have a social. Let's see if we can maybe put a visual up there on the screen. But on March 29th, we're doing the first ever, what we're calling a 1+1. It's kind of a social. It's kind of a gathering, little bit of networking, little bit of socializing, little bit of information, some structured and spontaneous types of activities, and it's going to be a really good time. And it's going to be in, I think, the Phoenix in Delray Beach on March 29th. So we're going to have some information that we're putting out there. Not that Phoenix.
Oh. Was there a resurrection, literally?
No,
Of the
no,
Phoenix, the original
different
Phoenix?
Yes.
But it was
So
around
there will
Delray.
definitely be more information to follow.
Terrific.
All right. So yeah,
You can
and-
contact us here at the show through the Facebook page, and I'm sure we'll have announcements there.
Yes, and we'll be posting some things on there as well. So it's really exciting. We're really looking forward to it. But, that is definitely an area that we're going to be talking a lot more about. It's an area people are going to be hearing more about. Just as we're getting older, people are starting to get the idea that sexuality and intimacy are still important and that we don't grow out of it.
Yeah, much as grown kids would rather prefer that their parents became asexual again, just like their parents
Well,
used to
again,
wish them
That's
when
right.
they were young kids.
We all wish our parents, we all know our parents didn't have sex because we have to know that so that we don't ever have to think about it. And herein lies the ultimate grossness for most people. Right? But that's our bias.
Well, our very
And we have to cop to
existence,
that.
right? Our very existence is kind of evidence.
Well, but that's it.
That's it. Only those times, however many siblings we have.
That's
it.
right. And all joking aside, that really is one of the biggest, if not the biggest obstacle when it comes to healthy sexuality and intimacy and still allowed to be human beings in nursing homes, ALFs, a memory care center, any type of adult type of community. The biggest obstacle is the adult children. And it's
of course.
their discomfort and
course.
it's their issues that are
Well,
robbing
it doesn't
so many
even have
people
to
of
be
quality
like
of life.
in a medical facility, even neighborhoods like where Dad lives.
Sure.
You see it a lot.
Sure.
People
and even
become,
just 55 older
people
communities.
become widowed, and they grieve however the appropriate time. And then women always outnumber men in those communities 3, 4, 5 to 1.
What was that phrase that we heard a lot of? The casserole brigade.
That's right.
After our mom passed.
After the casserole brigade, and then if there's any interest in dating, it's usually the adult children that start Oh, mother,
Right.
act your age.
Right. Or
Come
especially if mom or dad has money, then they
Oh,
instantly
sure.
go to that thought of they're going to be taken advantage of.
Their inheritance. There's
That's
some
right.
gold digger's going to come take their inheritance
Right.
away.
So those are the two guiding principles underlying a lot of adult children. Don't make me think about it, and don't threaten my inheritance.
That's right.
But not us, Dad, promise.
Yes, in case you're listening.
That's right. So we had, again, all these questions and got some good feedback. So you want to get to some of those? And again, if anybody wants to call in and ask their own questions, be happy to respond to those.
Every time we do these, every time we pass the index cards, just reading the questions, sometimes you can see how goofy, how silly, and also how sometimes heartbreaking. And I think these are always a good snapshot of the way people struggle. They want to know. This takes us all the way back to high school, right? Where we want to know and we can't ask because we can't look like a dork who doesn't know.
That's
so we
right.
just
We're
have to
supposed
act
to
like we know. Right.
Yep. Like with guys putting on condoms. Any guy that is just even not sure, ask.
And
Even if you ask in a bro kind of way, and maybe you're doing it just you want to make sure they know how to do it, ask. However you need to find out.
So when I see questions like this one, well, there's two that I thought were related. How do I figure out the best way to pleasure someone or make them orgasm? Right. And I never orgasm with my partner. Is there something wrong with me?
Yeah. Now, let me throw in too that you talk about the kinds of things that people are coming from. What questions like these reveal, a lot of these questions, biases.
Yeah.
Right? So let me just first crack at the how do I make my partner orgasm? All right? And let's just start with that very basic principle that we don't make anybody orgasm.
Right.
We are all responsible individually for our own orgasms.
Clearly, that was the message for a long time, especially for women. If you're not having orgasms, it's because you got a lousy lover. You got to just go get a better guy who can give them to you.
Okay, yeah, that was Cosmo. That was that double-edged sword that became Cosmo.
Yeah.
Why it went from the best thing that ever happened to female sexuality quickly to the worst thing that ever happened to female sexuality.
But they were also advocates for self-pleasuring and women getting in touch with their own orgasms.
Right.
I think the script was a little older.
Right. But starting with that point of we're all responsible for our own orgasm, but that doesn't mean that, again, if they're not doing it for me, get rid of them. Because here's really the punchline.
If they're not doing it for you, tell them.
That's it.
Explain to them. Show them what does it for you.
How do I know what the best way to pleasure my partner is? Ask them.
Right.
That's got to be part of the communication.
Assume, this, especially for young guys, this is one of those ageless messages, right? Don't assume what worked for the last partner is going to work for the next one.
That's right.
Remember the old TV repairman idea? The guy just worked all the knobs,
That's right.
Until he
Press
got
a few
clear
buttons
picture.
here.
Well, something's coming into focus. I don't know.
I
don't know what I'm doing, but must be doing something.
Right. But that's part of the great thing about a relationship, especially a new relationship. It's part of what makes it so exciting, and it's also something that we should never really lose, that discovery. Getting to know that person, looking. I will say a little personal thing to throw in there that I remember maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. For people at home, we lost our mom right before our parents' 60th anniversary, which is amazing in and of itself. But I remember a few years before mom passed, we're all in the kitchen talking, and there was something that mom and dad were talking about, and turned around, one of them said, "I didn't know that." And it really hit me that after 50-something years, they're still able to surprise each other.
Yeah.
And I think that was such a wonderful thing. And if people can do that in a relationship, it doesn't mean that it's all, roses and glory seeds. It's work. But if you can always be discovering things.
Lately, I've been trying to substitute work from being intentional. Because when you say, especially in therapy, if you tell people that good, long-lasting relationships take work, that's automatically you get that because nobody wants to work, right? But good relationships take being intentional and not allowing that slide.
Not the
you know,
taking
that
for granted.
natural. Well, you know how it goes, right? Obligatory, well, routine first, then obligatory,
Right.
then this, you know, kind of perfunctory, then after a while resentful. Right?
Right.
Nobody wants to have sex. Like, you know, I think we mentioned last week, I always tell new couples in therapy, the answer to the question, do you want to have sex? This kind of, fine. That's no longer, that's a
Right.
no. From now on, that's a no.
Yeah.
Right? There's no such thing as,
Right.
okay.
And you know, and first of all, and how can somebody, you know, if the response is fine, where's the oh goody that should follow that?
Right. Well, we know most guys are not insulted by that. They're too quick to go, yes.
Little opportunistic.
Well,
Yeah.
right. So I think that's an important concept that people
Yeah.
need to understand about orgasms. Women need to understand their bodies and their anatomy,
Right.
and we can't champion enough the clitoris, the importance of that structure that only women have, and it's only for sexual pleasure.
That's it. A physical organ.
Now, there
Okay,
was-
and again, even people that like to believe in creation, talk about intentionality, right? There is an organ that was created whose sole biological function is pleasure, right? And I wish they would think about that a little bit more. Right?
Yeah, remember I offended
again,
a priest with that once.
oh, I won an argument against a panel of priests with that once. That was a little kind of dare you to the function. Before we leave that question, though,
Yeah.
all right, about the orgasm and the sharing and the communication, I think part of, I want to point out the kind of need to clarify in some of these things. Part of that question is I don't have orgasms with my partner.
Right.
Right?
So
Now,
more than likely, he
that
or
could
she,
be-
by themselves.
Right, but that also could be that maybe with their partner, the focus is exclusively on intercourse, assuming the heterosexual dynamic in that couple, that slightly less than half of women report having
much less,
orgasms from,
right?
or most recently,
Quarter,
slightly less than
quarter
half.
to 30, I think.
Report not being able to orgasm through intercourse. So partners also need to be talking about a varied number of activities involved in it, including
Expanding the
foreplay.
repertoire. Sure.
Right. Because let me throw in on top of that one another question that's on here, and it's a common question that people ask, right? That whole series of, am I normal kind of questions. How often is, how often should we be having sex? But we get a lot of, how long is sex supposed to take?
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
And again, that's one of those. How are we defining it? How are we looking at
Well,
it?
because we know people use intercourse and sex interchangeably.
Right.
And that's still a problem.
Right. So if we're adding things like foreplay, which I can't stand that term, but if we're adding the foreplay, I mean, that should be the longer part of it. But I think guys need to hear this as well. And you remember that study that came out, I think, last year or 2 years ago from the University of Pennsylvania. It was a really, I think, very significant study. It really polled people about how they judged,
Right.
time with intercourse.
Right.
And pretty much universally, 1 to 2 minutes was considered undesirable, too quick.
Right.
2 to 3 minutes was considered also inadequate. 3 to 7 minutes, barely adequate. Was it 7 to 13 minutes, desirable?
Yeah.
And 10 to 30 minutes was almost universally rated
Ideal.
undesirable.
Oh, undesirable.
Undesirable.
Ah.
Too much, too long. Who's got that kind of time?
Right.
So the idea, and especially for guys,
That's interesting because
a lot
guys
of the
think
pressure,
they're supposed to be doing what they're seeing
That's
in porn.
right, that's
And they're
right.
supposed to last. Then they start freaking out. Oh my God, why isn't it
That's
happening yet?
exactly right.
And they're in their head doing work.
Exactly
And
right.
Even in sex,
That's right.
they're working too hard.
Guys, you're not going to be as big as a guy in porn. You're not going to ejaculate as much as a guy in porn. You're not going to last as long as a guy in porn. And chances are you're not going to have a partner who wants to be there as long as they are in porn.
Right. And to be a better lover for guys who are partnered with women, they should remember, maybe even for some guys who are partnered with men, that every guy has a sex toy attached to them. And they shouldn't be in such a hurry to bury it and play with it for a while and use it as a toy for their partner.
Yes, share it.
Yes,
share your toys.
Right. Share your toy. Right. It's really good advice that people respond well to, because everyone's so quick, again, because the recipe is do whatever, like you said, that stupid word, foreplay, the play required before to get her all revved up and ready before the main event.
Right.
And he should be ready for the main event. Right.
Well, the basic assumption that if a guy has an erection, he's ready.
Right.
And again, just not quite true.
Not quite true.
Just a plumbing thing. That's it.
And the old recipe, friction and fantasy. And of course, as we get older, we may need more of both.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've got time for another couple.
Oh, yeah, we got a couple more questions. Anything jump out at you?
Does the pill cause cancer?
No.
Absolutely not. The pill doesn't cause cancer. Having an abortion doesn't cause cancer.
That's actually another question. And having an abortion will not ruin a woman's chances of getting pregnant in the future.
These legit scare tactics, well, illegit, but scare tactics, an attempt to sound legit. We talked about this several months ago.
And vaccines don't cause autism.
Right. The mind-blowing concept that there are states that actually vote against sex ed being medically accurate. This is the kind of perfect example of the reason why legislators want sex ed to not have to be medically accurate, because it gives them license to lie.
Well, of course.
And there's a lot of these things that, places like these crisis pregnancy centers, these pseudo clinics that take state money, which is unconstitutional, from the sale of those ridiculous license plates that Jeb Bush had the audacity to say, "Oh, this has nothing to do with abortion. This is to promote, this is to promote awareness of adoption." Yeah, but using a battle cry like "Choose life" on the license
Well, if
plates.
it was adoption, it would probably want to say "Choose adoption."
Yeah, choose. So there's a lot of this stuff. There's especially today's pill. There's still a reputation, maybe from again those older baby boomers, because the first women to use the pill after about 1970 were there was a lot of estrogen in those pills.
Oh, very
there
very
was
high
some
doses.
connections to some cancers, but now
and a lot of pills don't
the
even
pill
contain
has
estrogen.
more protective effects. Women on the pill tend to have less incidence of certain cancers than women who never take them.
And you know what? You mentioned that again. A lot of these things come from concerted efforts to make it okay to lie and to present misinformation. Related to that too, these same people who will say, "Hey, we're not talking about abortion. We're going to just talk about," because they're abstinence people, right? And they're telling kids, especially, that condoms don't prevent against STIs, and they'll especially say they don't prevent against HPV and they don't prevent against herpes simplex viruses.
Right, because we're talking about parts of the skin that are not covered by the condom.
Exactly.
Right, like here. We use the microphone.
Right. Or they're talking about other parts of the body. And it's very disingenuous, because it's like saying
also very
fluoride
intentional.
toothpaste will not prevent car accident. Okay? They're using it in a way that's specious.
There was a very, very intentional effort to confuse people's minds between the difference between Mifeprex and the so-called morning after or Plan B birth control.
Right. Mifeprex basically being an abortifacient.
The so-called chemical versus surgical abortion. And Plan B, or the morning after, now they work up to like 3-4 days, prevents pregnancy.
Emergency contraception.
Right. That prevents pregnancy. That's birth control.
Right.
It would do nothing if a woman was already pregnant.
Right. It's high-dose birth control.
Purposely calling them abortion pills, it got swept up into the frenzy. And again, same people who are against sex ed are against abortion, against contraception, against any kind of sex positivity.
Right. And these are also
So
the
this is
people that
part
will
of the
refer
battle
to
we're
partial
fighting.
birth abortion.
And it keeps coming around like a greatest hit.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
a woman decides, as she's being wheeled into the delivery room, never mind,
and
I
they're
don't
still
want this
saying
child.
that.
I want an abortion
They're
instead.
still saying that. These, I'm sorry, that's evil.
Of course it's
That is
evil.
evil because they know what they foment with that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
All right. Let's say take time for maybe one more question.
No, I think we should do a little plug-in because the music is going to start.
Okay.
Right? So let me get in a plug for any of our listeners who happen to be in the field of sexual medicine or mental health. I'd like to encourage you to check out modernsextherapyinstitutes.com. That's institutes plural. modernsextherapyinstitutes.com. We have some wonderful trainings coming up, including a training that folks need to get certified as sexuality educators or counselors or therapists, and that's the Sexual Attitude Reassessment,
Yes.
which this guy and I will be doing in New York in May. So you
That's
can
right.
check out
That's
the
coming up.
website, and we'll have more announcements about future trainings and future shows. So in the meantime, you know what the music means.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll be here next Monday and every Monday at 9 o'clock for Sex Talk with the Segal Brothers.
Have a great week.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Segal Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2 TV Productions on Facebook, or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week.
The opinions expressed on the preceding